Hi, it's Danielle from the blog warmwithtime.com, and in today's video I want to share with you an easy method for achieving a raw wood look on furniture. So I'm going to be stripping this church pew that you see here. I picked this up from Facebook Marketplace, and the previous owner had already tried to remove some of the stain over time, and it left the finish really splotchy because it was sort of half done. And I knew that one day I would like to tackle it and get a beautiful raw wood look on this piece, and that's the project that I'm going to be demonstrating this process with today. Using chemical strippers is often considered to be really labor intensive and difficult for many DIYers, and that's because they do a process that's a little bit differently than mine. My process that I want to share with you today is as easy as washing your car. So if you can wash your car, you can definitely achieve a beautiful raw wood finish just as easily using this method today. So my favorite stripper that I use, hands down, I've tested several over the years, is Citrus Strip. And it's great for a couple of reasons. One, it is really thick and paste-like, so when you apply it, it stays moist a lot better than other strippers. Also, because it's a paste, it can adhere to the furniture and not just run off like some more water consistency strippers. Also, Citrus Strip has a pretty pleasant smell. I wouldn't spray it on myself as perfume or anything, but it's an orange chemical scent that is a little bit more pleasing than just straight up chemical scent like most strippers have. So I really like that one. That's the one I use every time. So the first step in this entire process is to make sure you choose a good setting. It's very essential for this process that you find a spot outside that is very shady and doesn't have a lot of direct sun. The reason being is that you do not want your stripper to dry up on the piece of furniture, because then it'll be really difficult to remove. So choose a spot that's out of direct sun. After I took my church pew outside, I found a really nice shady spot in our gravel driveway. So if some of these clips look a little dark, that's because we're in the shade on purpose. Alright, so after you have the perfect spot, it is time to actually apply the stripper. So when you're applying stripper, I use a chip brush, just something you can throw away after a couple of projects, and a paper plate or maybe even a paper disposable cup of some kind, just something to actually put the stripper in. That way you can dip your brush in and apply it to the piece. And when you apply your stripper to your piece, it's essential to use a lot of stripper, a lot of product. You want to put it all over. So for example, this 4.5 foot church pew that I am showing you today, I used a whole quart of product to get one coat of this church pew stripped. So I use a lot. And the reason you want to use a lot of product, in my opinion, is because the amount that you apply helps to keep the other layers of stripper below it a lot more moist, and that keeps the product from drying up too fast. When it comes to stripping, drying stripper is your absolute worst nightmare. It is really difficult to remove, and it just makes it more of a headache and more of a pain in the butt. So just make sure you apply a lot of it and keep it out of direct sun. I know a lot of people use the saran wrap method where they apply saran wrap all over the piece, and that saran wrap helps to keep the moisture in the chemical stripper. However, for me, I just find that incredibly wasteful. I try not to use a lot of plastics in my home, especially for something that I'm going to throw away, and I end up using so much it doesn't really want to stick, and another step that you have to do. So for me, I just skip that and I just use a lot of product and keep it out of direct sun, and that tends to work for me. And the next step is to let the stripper sit on your piece anywhere from 1 to 5 hours. The time frame that you need to let your product sit really depends on the original previous finish. Obviously, a stronger finish that's more modern on newer pieces, that kind of finish, you would need to let it sit on a lot longer. But for a piece that is older, more vintage antique pieces that haven't been sealed in a really long time, those finishes are already starting to wear away over time. You can get away with only leaving the stripper on for a couple of hours. I would recommend that you let the stripper sit on as long as possible. That way you can ensure that the most amount of work is done to remove that original previous finish, but you want to remove it just before it starts to actually dry. So for this particular church pew, I let the stripper sit on for about 3 hours. Alright, now we're at the fun stuff, the removal and actually seeing the raw wood finish for the first time. So the traditional way of removing stripper is to take a spatula or a putty knife and kind of scrape the finish off. But I find that that is not only super labor intensive, it takes forever, but then you have all this stripper goop that you have to collect and then dispose of. You get it all over your hands. Also, you can really gouge up your piece because the finish is really wet from the stripper, and then you're taking a sharp putty knife and kind of scraping it over on it. So in my method, I just take that out of the picture altogether, and I just simplify that process and make it a lot easier. And that is by using the power of a water hose, just a simple water hose. I let the pressure of the water push the stripper off the piece. But before I can use the water hose to actually remove the finish, I need to kind of like rough it up or scrub it a little bit, and that helps to kind of loosen the stripper layers underneath. Anything that was a little bit dried up can kind of loosen and remix with the layers underneath. It really helps the water pressure from the hose press it off and push it off the piece a lot easier. So to scrub and rough up the stripper, I just use a myriad of things. Like I've used old rags that I had laying around, old washcloths, Brillo pads work really well, or even a super fine 000 steel wool works really great to just scrub over the entire piece. And then you can use the water hose to actually do the work for you and push off the stripper from the piece. So using the water hose is a super easy way to remove that stripper and get it off your piece so you can see that beautiful raw wood. It's a lot less messy, it's a lot less time consuming, and I let my water hose do the hard work for me. However, I will say this method is not advised for any veneered pieces. If you're trying to strip those, you're probably going to have to try a different route because this much contact with water will loosen the glue on the veneer and cause some serious damage. So definitely don't try it if your piece is not solid wood. And the last and final step is to go ahead and seal your piece for durability if that's something that you plan on doing. So raw wood itself is obviously going to be porous, so it's going to take in stains and damage pretty quickly. So depending on the piece and how much traffic and use you're going to give it, you may need to consider sealing it. So for a dresser that I did in a couple of videos back now, I'll link that video down in the description. That dresser is going in our guest bedroom. It doesn't see a lot of use. It's not going to have a lot of food sitting on it, so I didn't even seal it. But for this church pew that's going to sit on my front porch and be exposed to weather and the elements, I really need to make sure that this was sealed properly. So I tested 2 different exterior sealers, and both of them were basically a complete fail. They turned it really dark, and I did not like that at all. So currently I have an interior grade sealer applied to this church pew. It is Minwax's polyacrylic in the matte finish. But this is honestly one of my favorite sealers. Doesn't change the look of the raw wood, and I think the matte version of this polyacrylic is great, especially if you're trying to achieve a raw wood look, because raw wood is naturally not going to have a sheen to it, so the matte look is perfect. So this is an interior sealer. It's not really recommended for exterior pieces. I am just going to take a chance here because I didn't have any other product that I could use that wouldn't change the color, and I think that if I check on it every year or so, I may need to add another coat. But so far so good. But it's only been a couple months since I've left it out here on the porch, so we'll just see, and I'll update you guys down in the description or over on the post on my blog. So I hope you enjoyed this video and see how easy achieving a raw wood look can be. It really doesn't need to be super labor intensive and time consuming. I've done this method on several pieces, from kitchen tables to dressers to church pews, end tables, coffee tables, and it all works great. So if you haven't tried it, be sure to try the way that I do it on your next project. If you're wanting more tips and details on achieving a raw wood look, be sure to check out the blog post on my website. I will link that down in the description. That's jam-packed with lots of other tips that I wasn't able to share today. And if you're new here and enjoy other DIY projects and farmhouse inspiration, be sure to hit subscribe down below. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.